What happens when a light-hearted late-night interview turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history? William Zabka, the man who made Johnny Lawrence a household name, walked onto Jimmy Fallon's stage expecting a typical promotional chat. Instead, what unfolded was a confrontation so intense that Zabka eventually stood up and walked off set, leaving Fallon speechless and the audience in stunned silence. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think really caused this explosion. The interview started normally enough. Fallon welcomed Zabka with his usual enthusiastic energy, and the audience cheered as Zabka settled into the guest chair. They exchanged pleasantries, talked briefly about the latest season, and everything seemed fine. But then Fallon steered the conversation in an unexpected direction. "So, William, I gotta ask you something that a lot of people have been talking about online," Fallon said, his tone shifting slightly. "There's been this whole conversation about method acting and how far actors should go to stay in character. Some of your castmates have mentioned that you're pretty intense on set. Is that fair to say?" Zabka smiled, but there was a hint of tension in his expression. "I mean, I take the work seriously. I think we all do. It's not about being intense, it's about being committed." "Right, committed," Fallon nodded. "But there were some reports, and I'm just asking because people are curious, that you sometimes stay in character between takes. Like full Johnny Lawrence mode. Is that something you do?" "Where are you getting this from?" Zabka asked, his smile fading slightly. Fallon laughed nervously. "I mean, it's out there. Social media, some interviews. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just curious about your process." "My process is my process," Zabka replied, his voice firm but controlled. "I don't think I need to justify how I prepare for a role to anyone, including whatever's being said on social media." The audience went quiet. This wasn't the fun, jokey banter they were used to on Fallon's show. Fallon tried to lighten the mood. "Hey, no, I'm not asking you to justify anything. I think it's actually really cool when actors fully commit like that. I was just, wondering if you could share some insight into how you get into that headspace." Zabka leaned back in his chair, studying Fallon for a moment. "Jimmy, can I be honest with you? It feels like you're setting me up here. You invite me on the show to talk about the work we're doing, and instead you want to focus on rumors and gossip." "No, that's not what I'm doing at all," Fallon protested, his trademark smile still in place, but looking more strained. "I'm genuinely interested in your craft. You've been playing this character for years now, and you've made him so layered and complex. I'm asking as someone who admires the work." "Then ask me about the work," Zabka shot back. "Ask me about the scenes, the storylines, the character development. Don't ask me about what people are saying online or what they think they know about how I operate on set." Fallon shifted in his seat, clearly caught off guard by Zabka's directness. "Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about this season then. Your character goes through a lot of growth, a lot of redemption. How do you balance playing someone who's trying to change while still keeping that edge that makes Johnny who he is?" "That's a better question," Zabka said, but his body language remained tense. "Johnny's journey has always been about someone who got stuck in a moment in time and is trying to figure out who he is beyond that. He's not a villain, he never was. He's just someone who didn't know how to move forward." "Right, and that's what makes him so compelling," Fallon agreed. "But speaking of moving forward, there's been talk about whether the show is going to continue beyond this season. Have you heard anything about that?" Zabka's expression hardened. "Are we doing this again? Are we back to rumors and speculation?" "It's a legitimate question," Fallon defended. "Fans want to know if there's going to be more." "Then they can wait for an official announcement like everyone else," Zabka replied. "I'm not going to sit here and speculate about business decisions that haven't been made public. That's not why I came here." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Fallon attempted another laugh, looking toward his band and the audience as if seeking backup. "Wow. Okay, you are really not giving me anything here, William." "What do you want me to give you?" Zabka asked pointedly. You want me to create controversy. You want me to say something that's going to generate headlines. That's not who I am, and that's not what I'm here to do. Fallon's smile finally dropped. I'm just trying to have a conversation. Are you? Zabka challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you had an agenda coming into this. Every question you've asked has been designed to get me to say something provocative or to confirm gossip. That's not a conversation, Jimmy. That's an interrogation. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence as Fallon tried to regain control of the interview. He clasped his hands together and leaned forward, attempting to appear genuine and conciliatory. William, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. I have nothing but respect for you and the work you do. I'm a huge fan of the show. Everyone here is. Fallon gestured to the audience, who offered scattered applause that felt more obligatory than enthusiastic. I'm not trying to create drama. I'm just asking questions that I think people are interested in. That's the problem though, isn't it? Zabka responded, his voice steady but with an edge. You're asking questions that people are interested in, not questions that matter. There's a difference. One is about entertainment gossip, the other is about actual storytelling and craft. But this is a talk show, Fallon said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. Part of what we do here is have fun, be a little light, maybe touch on things people are curious about. That's the format. I understand the format, Zabka replied. I've done hundreds of these interviews over the years, but there's a way to do it that's respectful, and there's a way to do it that feels like you're trying to bait your guest into giving you a viral moment. Which one are we doing here, Jimmy? Fallon's face flushed slightly. That's not fair. I would never try to bait anyone. Then why did you bring up the method acting thing? Zabka pressed. You had to know that was based on nothing but set gossip and speculation. Why make that the focus when we could be talking about the actual story we're telling? Because people want to know about you, Fallon insisted. They want to know what it's like to be you, what it's like to play this character. That's not gossip, that's human interest. No, human interest would be asking me why this character resonates with people, Zabka countered. Human interest would be asking me about the themes we're exploring or the messages we're trying to convey. What you're doing is asking me to confirm or deny things that don't matter, so you can turn it into a segment that gets shared on social media. Fallon sat back in his chair, his expression now showing genuine frustration. You know what, William? I'm starting to feel like maybe you came here with a chip on your shoulder. I've interviewed hundreds of guests on this show, and I've never had someone be this combative. Combative? Zabka repeated, his eyebrows raising. I'm being combative because I won't play along with what you want? That's interesting. You're being combative because you're turning every question into an accusation, Fallon said, his voice rising slightly. I ask you about your process. You act like I'm attacking you. I ask you about the future of the show. You act like I'm trying to trap you. At what point do you just answer a question normally? At what point do you ask a question that deserves a normal answer? Zabka shot back immediately. The studio went completely silent. Even the band members looked uncomfortable, unsure where to look. Fallon stared at Zabka for a moment, clearly trying to decide how to proceed. Okay, Fallon said slowly. Let me ask you something straightforward then. Do you enjoy playing Johnny Lawrence? Simple question. Yes or no? Of course I do, Zabka answered. It's one of the great privileges of my career. Good. There we go, Fallon said, some of his usual energy returning. See, that wasn't so hard. Now, what do you enjoy most about it? I enjoy the complexity, Zabka began. I enjoy getting to show different sides of a character that people thought they understood. Johnny could have just been the bully from the original film, but instead, we've been able to show his vulnerability, his struggles, his desire to be better. That's rare in this business. And that's great, Fallon nodded. That's exactly the kind of stuff I want to hear about. But you've got to admit, part of what makes the show work is the nostalgia factor, right? People loved the original movies, and seeing you back in that role is a big part of the appeal. Zabka's jaw tightened. Is that a question or a statement? It's an observation, Fallon replied, and I'm asking if you agree with it. I think reducing what we do to just nostalgia is dismissive, Zabka said carefully. Yes, there are callbacks and references that fans appreciate, but the show stands on its own. It's not just about remembering the past, it's about examining it and moving beyond it. Sure, but without the nostalgia, would anyone care? Fallon pressed. I mean, let's be real here. The whole premise is built on bringing back these characters from the 80s. That's nostalgia. The premise is built on showing what happened to people after their defining moment, Zabka corrected. It's about consequences and second chances. The fact that it connects to something people remember doesn't make it less valid as storytelling. I didn't say it was less valid, Fallon protested. I'm just saying that the nostalgia is a huge part of why it's successful. You can't deny that. Why are you so insistent on this point? Zabka asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. What are you trying to get me to say? That the show is just a cash grab banking on people's memories? Because that's what it sounds like you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Fallon said, his own frustration now evident. I'm making an obvious observation that most people would just agree with and move on. But you're determined to turn everything into a confrontation. Because you're not listening to what I'm actually saying, Zabka responded, his voice firm. Every time I try to give you a substantive answer about the work, you deflect back to surface-level analysis or rumours. It's exhausting. Fallon took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose himself. The audience was completely still now, sensing that this had crossed from uncomfortable into something potentially explosive. The host forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. All right, William. Clearly we got off on the wrong foot here. Let me try a different approach. Your character has become this icon of redemption, right? People see themselves in Johnny's journey. What do you hope audiences take away from watching him evolve? Zabka studied Fallon for a long moment before answering. I hope they take away that it's never too late to change, that the mistakes you made don't have to define you forever. That's the core of what we're trying to say. That's beautiful, Fallon said, and for the first time in several minutes, he seemed sincere. And I think that message really resonates, especially in today's world where everyone's past is just a click away, which actually brings me to something I wanted to ask you about. Zabka's expression immediately shifted. Here we go? No, hear me out, Fallon continued quickly. There was an interview you did years ago before the show started where you talked about being typecast after the original movie. You said it was frustrating, that people couldn't see you as anything other than the bully. Do you feel vindicated now that you've been able to reclaim that character on your own terms? That's actually a decent question, Zabka admitted, seeming slightly surprised. And yes, there is something satisfying about taking a character that could have been one-dimensional and showing all the dimensions that were always there. It's been healing in a way, both for me as an actor and I think for the character himself. So you feel like you and Johnny have gone through similar journeys? Fallon asked, leaning in. In some ways, Zabka acknowledged. We've both had to deal with perception versus reality. We've both had to fight against people's assumptions. That parallel has made playing him feel very personal. That's fascinating, Fallon said, and he seemed to mean it. But that interview I mentioned, you also said something about Hollywood being unwilling to let people evolve past their most famous roles. Do you still feel that way, or has this show changed your perspective? Zabka hesitated. I think Hollywood is still very much about putting people in boxes. This show has been an exception, not the rule. Most actors who get known for one thing struggle to break out of that for their entire careers. Right, but you did break out, Fallon pressed. So, what advice would you give to actors who feel trapped by their most famous role? I don't know if I did break out, Zabka replied carefully. I'm playing the same character I was known for. I've just been given the opportunity to explore him more deeply. That's not the same thing as breaking out. But come on, Fallon said, his tone becoming slightly argumentative again. You've taken a character that everyone hated and made him beloved. You've completely changed how people see Johnny Lawrence and, by extension, how they see you. That's breaking out. Or it's just good writing, Zabka countered. I'm not trying to be modest here, Jimmy. I'm trying to be accurate. The writers created this opportunity. I'm just doing my job. You're being way too humble, Fallon insisted. Anyone could have played this role, but you made it what it is. You have to own that. Why? Zabka asked sharply. Why do I have to own anything according to you? Why can't I just acknowledge that it's a collaborative effort and leave it at that? Fallon's smile finally disappeared completely. Because it comes across as false modesty, William. It comes across as you trying to seem more noble than you are. The audience gasped. Several people exchanged shocked glances. Zabka sat very still, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me?" Zabka said quietly, his voice dangerously calm. Fallon seemed to realize he'd crossed a line, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "I'm just being honest. You're sitting here acting like you're just a humble actor doing his job, but we both know that's not true. You've negotiated for producer credits, you've had input on storylines, you've made sure this character stays front and center. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't sit here and pretend you're just along for the ride." "How dare you?" Zabka said, his voice low but intense. "You don't know anything about what I've negotiated or why. You don't know anything about how I've approached this work or what my intentions have been. You're making assumptions based on what, exactly? More gossip? More rumors?" "I'm making observations based on publicly available information," Fallon replied defensively. "You're listed as a producer. That's a fact. The show centers around your character. That's a fact. I'm not attacking you. I'm just pointing out that you're being disingenuous." "Disingenuous," Zabka repeated slowly, as if testing the word. "You invite me onto your show, you spend the entire interview trying to provoke me, and now you're calling me disingenuous. That's incredible." "I'm not trying to provoke you," Fallon protested, but his body language suggested otherwise. "I'm trying to have a real conversation instead of the usual promotional fluff. I thought you'd appreciate that, actually. I thought you'd want to dig deeper." "Dig deeper?" Zabka's voice rose slightly. "You haven't dug into anything except trying to create conflict. You've questioned my integrity, dismissed the work as nostalgia, and now you're accusing me of being fake. What part of that is digging deeper into anything meaningful?" "I'm trying to get past the press junket answers," Fallon shot back. "Every interview you do, it's the same rehearsed responses, the same safe talking points. I'm trying to get to something real here." "By insulting me?" Zabka asked incredulously. "By calling me disingenuous on national television? That's your strategy for getting something real? If that's what it takes to get you to drop the act, then yes," Fallon said, and there was an edge to his voice now that suggested his own frustration had fully taken over. Zabka stood up abruptly. The sudden movement caused the audience to collectively inhale sharply. He reached up and began removing his microphone. "What are you doing?" Fallon asked, standing as well, genuine alarm in his voice now. "I'm leaving," Zabka stated simply, his hands working to unclip the mic pack from his belt. This was a mistake. "William, come on, sit down," Fallon said, his voice taking on a pleading quality that was completely different from his earlier tone. "Let's just talk this out." "Talk what out?" Zabka asked, still working on removing his microphone. "You've made it clear what you think of me. You think I'm fake, you think I'm arrogant, you think everything I've said tonight has been an act. What exactly is there left to talk about?" "I didn't say you were arrogant," Fallon protested weakly. "You didn't have to," Zabka replied. "It was implied in every question you asked. Every time I tried to share credit with the writers or the rest of the cast, you pushed back. You wanted me to take all the glory so you could then tear me down for it. I've been in this business long enough to recognize that game, Jimmy." The audience was dead silent. Some people had their phones out, clearly recording what was happening. Fallon looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would step in and save the situation, but his producers seemed just as frozen as everyone else. "That's not what I was doing," Fallon said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I was trying to challenge you, to push you to be more open. That's what good interviewers do." "Good interviewers also know when to listen," Zabka countered, finally getting his mic pack free. He set it on the chair carefully, a gesture that somehow felt more damning than if he'd thrown it down in anger. "Good interviewers create an environment where their guests feel comfortable enough to share something real. You didn't want me to share anything real, Jimmy. You wanted me to give you ammunition." "Ammunition for what?" Fallon asked, his frustration returning. "What do you think this is? I'm not trying to take you down. You're acting paranoid. Paranoid, Zabka repeated, shaking his head. First disingenuous, now paranoid. You're really painting quite a picture here. Because you're overreacting, Fallon insisted. We had a tough conversation. So what? That doesn't mean you storm off like a child. Sit down and let's finish this like adults. The condescension in Fallon's tone seemed to be the final straw. Zabka's expression hardened completely. Like adults? He asked quietly. Adults treat each other with respect. Adults don't invite someone onto their show just to ambush them with loaded questions and personal attacks. Adults don't call their guests fake and paranoid when they don't get the responses they want. You want to talk about acting like a child, Jimmy? Look in a mirror. Fallon's face flushed red. You know what, fine. Walk off. Go ahead. But don't pretend you're taking some moral high ground here. You came on this show knowing exactly what the format was. You knew we were going to have a conversation, a real one, not just you plugging your show. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't do interviews. I've done thousands of interviews, Zabka said, his voice remaining controlled even as Fallon's rose. I've sat across from journalists who've asked tough questions, who've pushed me, who've challenged my perspectives. I've never walked off a set before in my entire career, not once. Think about what that means, Jimmy. Think about what you did here tonight that made this the first time. What I did? Fallon's voice cracked slightly. I asked you questions. That's my job. If you can't handle being asked questions without getting defensive and hostile, that's on you, not me. Hostile? Zabka asked, and for the first time, there was a note of something almost like sad amusement in his voice. Jimmy, I've been nothing but measured this entire interview. I've responded to your provocations with patience and honesty. If you think that's hostile, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. You've been argumentative from the moment you sat down, Fallon shot back. Every single question I asked you had a problem with. Every topic I brought up, you accused me of having an agenda. That's not being measured, that's being difficult. Or maybe, Zabka said slowly, your questions were actually problematic and I was right to push back on them. Has that possibility occurred to you? That maybe, just maybe, I'm not the problem here? Fallon opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He looked out at the audience, many of whom were clearly on Zabka's side based on their expressions. The host seemed to realize he was losing this exchange badly. Look, Fallon tried again, his tone shifting to something more conciliatory. Maybe we both got a little heated. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. Can we just reset and finish the interview on a better note for the audience? Zabka looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. No, Jimmy, I don't think we can. Because this wasn't just about getting heated or saying things we didn't mean. This was about fundamental respect, and you've shown tonight that you don't have that for me or for the work I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise just to make good television. So that's it? Fallon asked, and now he sounded almost desperate. You're really going to walk out? Yes, Zabka said simply. I am. He turned toward the stage exit, then paused and looked back at Fallon one more time. You know what the saddest part of this is? I actually admired you. I've watched your show, I've seen you with other guests, and I always thought you had a genuine warmth to you. I was looking forward to this conversation. But somewhere along the way, you decided that being provocative was more important than being kind. That getting a viral moment was more important than having a real connection with your guest. I hope it was worth it. With that, William Zabka walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy Fallon standing alone in front of a stunned audience. The silence that followed was deafening. Fallon looked like he wanted to say something, do something, but he seemed paralyzed. Finally, he turned to the camera, his trademark smile completely absent. We're going to take a quick break, he said quietly, and the show cut to commercial. The clip of Zabka's walk-off spread across social media within minutes, generating millions of views and countless debates about who was in the wrong. It became one of the most talked about late-night moments in years, a stark reminder that even in the world of carefully managed celebrity interviews, real tensions can boil over in ways that no one expects. If you want to stay updated on more stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment below answering this question. Who do you think was more at fault in this confrontation? William Zabka for walking off, or Jimmy Fallon for the way he conducted the interview?